My beloved child, stop for a moment, because the truth that was hidden behind your soulmate's family decisions is far more unexpected than you were ever led to believe. For years, you may have wondered why they hesitated, why certain conversations suddenly stopped, or why someone seemed determined to keep the two of you apart. But now imagine a single DNA report being placed on a table, one result being read aloud, and an entire family suddenly falling completely silent. Don't skip, because this story is about to reveal why the relationship was never as simple as it appeared. The shocking part is that the result did not reveal what everyone expected. Instead, it uncovered a connection buried so deeply in the family's past that even your soulmate had never been told the complete truth. And here is where everything changes. Your soulmate had been given a version of the story that made you look like someone they were simply not supposed to choose. They were told there were reasons, traditions, expectations, and family matters that had to be respected. But behind those explanations was another secret. Someone in the family had known that a DNA test could completely change the meaning of an old family story. When the test finally happened, the person reading the result reportedly had to check it again because the first conclusion seemed impossible. Suddenly, an old photograph, a forgotten name, and a decades-old family document began making sense. Your soulmate realized that the reason they had been kept from marrying you was connected to something that happened long before either of you were born. Stay till the end, because the next revelation explains why the family's reaction was not anger, it was shock, disbelief, and a desperate need to understand what had just been uncovered. Something huge is waiting for you, because there is one detail in this story that changes everything. The DNA result did not simply answer a question, it reopened one. Your soulmate began asking questions that nobody in the family wanted to answer. Why had certain records disappeared? Why had one relative always avoided discussing the past? And why had your name suddenly become connected to a family mystery that was supposedly finished generations ago? As your soulmate searched for the truth, they discovered that the person who had strongly opposed your relationship may have known more than they ever admitted. And when your soulmate finally confronted them, the response was not what anyone expected. There was a pause, a deep breath, and then one sentence that changed the entire direction of the story: you were never told the real reason. Don't skip now. Because that sentence is only the beginning, and what your soulmate learned next could explain why their family fought so hard to keep two hearts from becoming one. My beloved child, the moment your soulmate heard those words, something inside them shifted. You were never told the real reason. They stood there trying to understand what that could possibly mean, while the person in front of them refused to explain everything at once. Instead, they opened an old box that had been kept untouched for years. Inside were photographs, handwritten notes, and one document with a name your soulmate recognized immediately. Your name. Not written recently, not added by accident, but connected to a story that had apparently existed long before your soulmate ever met you. Stay till the end, because this is where the mystery becomes even deeper. The family had spent years believing they were protecting your soulmate from a complicated truth, but the DNA result had forced that truth back into the open. And suddenly, the person who once insisted that your soulmate could never marry you was no longer speaking with confidence. What happened next made the room completely still. Your soulmate asked one simple question: if this was the real reason, why did nobody tell me? Nobody answered immediately. Then the oldest person in the family finally admitted that an old family connection had been misunderstood for years. The DNA test had challenged a belief that everyone had accepted without questioning it. Your soulmate realized that decisions about their future had been made using information that was incomplete. They had been told to stay away from you, but they had never been given the entire explanation. And now the test had created something the family could not ignore, proof that the past needed to be examined again. Don't skip, because your soulmate was about to discover exactly who had hidden this information, and why they believed revealing it could change everything. At that moment, your soulmate stopped thinking about the family's approval and started thinking about you. And before we go deeper, remember this moment, because it may become the turning point of the entire story. If this message is resonating with you, stay with it and share it with someone who needs to hear a story about hidden truth finally coming to light. But most importantly, stay till the end, because the biggest revelation has not happened yet. Your soulmate returned to that old document and noticed something nobody had noticed before: a date. The date connected two events that the family had always treated as completely unrelated. Suddenly, the DNA result made a strange kind of sense. Your soulmate looked at the document again, then looked at the family member who had kept it hidden, and asked, "What happened on this date?" The answer came quietly: "That is the part we were hoping you would never discover. Something huge is waiting for you, because the next discovery would reveal why the family's fear had never really been about you at all." Part 3. My beloved child, the date on that document changed the atmosphere instantly. Your soulmate stared at it, then asked again what had happened that day. This time, nobody looked away. An old family photograph was placed beside the document, and your soulmate noticed something they had never seen before: a familiar name written on the back. It was connected to a family story that had been repeated for years, but now the DNA result was forcing everyone to question whether that story had ever been accurate. Don't skip, because the next detail is where your soulmate finally understood why certain family members had always been uncomfortable whenever your name was mentioned. The truth was not as simple as, "You were not accepted." There was a hidden misunderstanding surrounding two families, and someone had carried that misunderstanding for so long that it had eventually become treated like an unbreakable rule. Then your soulmate discovered something even more surprising. The person who had warned them never to marry you had actually known about the old connection for years. They had believed they were preventing a family complication, but the DNA result had exposed a gap in their understanding. Your soulmate suddenly realized that their relationship with you had been judged before the full truth was even known. Every delayed conversation, every unexplained hesitation, every moment when someone suddenly changed the subject began looking different. It was as if pieces of a puzzle were finally being placed together. Your soulmate asked for the complete records, and this time nobody could stop them. One document led to another, and eventually they found a handwritten note that contained a sentence that made their heart stop: "If they ever discover the truth, they will understand why we kept them apart." Stay till the end, because that sentence was about to reveal the real reason behind the family's silence. But then came the moment nobody expected. Your soulmate looked at the DNA report one more time and realized that the result had not proven what the family feared. It had actually disproved a belief that had controlled their decisions for years. The room went silent. The person who had once been certain about your future suddenly had no explanation. Your soulmate understood that the barrier between you had been built on an old assumption, not on the truth. And that realization changed their emotions completely. They were no longer asking, "Why can't I be with this person?" They were asking, "Why was I ever told that I couldn't?" Something huge is waiting for you, because now your soulmate had a choice: accept the family's old version of the story, or follow the evidence all the way to the beginning. And for the first time, they chose the second path. What they discovered next would make them question everything they had ever been told about you, themselves, and the reason your connection had been kept at a distance. Part 4. My beloved child, your soulmate was no longer willing to accept unanswered questions. They placed the DNA report beside the old documents and began comparing every detail. And then they noticed something nobody had focused on before. The dates did not match the family's version of events. One old record suggested one story, while another document quietly pointed towards something completely different. Your soulmate felt the pieces coming together, but there was still one missing connection. Don't skip, because that missing piece was hidden inside a letter that had never been meant to be found. When the letter was finally opened, it revealed that someone had deliberately kept an important family truth away from everyone involved. Suddenly, the reason your soulmate had been discouraged from marrying you looked completely different. It was not simply about tradition, expectations, or family approval. It was about a secret that had been protected for years. Your soulmate read the letter slowly, and one sentence immediately caught their attention. It explained that the family had once made a decision based on information they believed was unquestionable. But the person who wrote the letter had warned that someday new evidence could change everything. That new evidence was now sitting directly in front of your soulmate, the DNA result. Stay till the end, because this is the point where your soulmate finally understood why certain relatives had reacted so strongly whenever your relationship became serious. They were afraid of the past being reopened. They were afraid that the old story would collapse. And now it was collapsing. Your soulmate looked around the room and asked, "How long have you known?" No one answered. Then one family member finally admitted that the truth had been kept quiet because they believed revealing it would create consequences for everyone. But instead of accepting that explanation, your soulmate asked the question that changed the entire conversation: did you ever actually verify it? That question created complete silence. And when the answer finally came, your soulmate realized that the family had been protecting an assumption, not a proven truth. This was the revelation they had been searching for. The DNA test had not merely changed a relationship, it had challenged the foundation of the decision that had kept you apart. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate then made a decision that nobody in the room expected. They asked for one final piece of evidence, the document that could connect the past to the present once and for all. And when that document was finally brought forward, your soulmate saw a familiar detail that made their heart race. It connected directly to the story you had been told about your own life. For the first time, your soulmate understood that the truth had never been as far away as everyone wanted them to believe. Stay till the end, because the final discovery would force the family to face one question they had avoided for years: if the original reason for keeping you apart was never actually true, then why were you separated in the first place? Part 5. My beloved child, the final document was placed on the table, and your soulmate immediately noticed the name written across it. It was the same name that had appeared in the old records, but there was one difference this time. Beside it was a detail that connected directly to the DNA report. Your soulmate read it twice, then slowly looked up at the family. Nobody spoke. The silence itself felt like an answer. For years, everyone had believed they understood the reason you and your soulmate could never become one family, but now the evidence was telling a completely different story. Don't skip, because your soulmate was about to discover that the person who had created the biggest barrier between you may have misunderstood the truth from the very beginning. The family had been carrying an old belief forward, generation after generation, until nobody remembered to ask whether it was actually true. Then came the revelation that changed your soulmate emotionally. The DNA result had exposed a connection between two branches of the family that had been separated by an old misunderstanding. But the connection was not what everyone had feared. Instead, it showed that the story used to justify keeping you apart had been based on incomplete information. Your soulmate suddenly understood why certain relatives had always avoided discussing the past. They had not wanted the family to discover that an important decision had been made without knowing the full truth. Stay till the end, because your soulmate then found the one piece of information that made everything even more personal. It was an old note written by someone who had known both sides of the story. The note explained that someday, if the truth was finally uncovered, your soulmate would have to make their own decision rather than simply obey an old family belief. Reading those words changed something inside them. For the first time, they realized that their future had been shaped by a story they had never been allowed to question. And then your soulmate did something nobody expected. Instead of arguing, they quietly picked up the phone and contacted the person who had always been the strongest voice against your relationship. The conversation began calmly, but one question changed everything. Did you know the DNA result could prove the old story was wrong? There was a long silence on the other end. Your soulmate knew immediately that there was more to uncover. Something huge is waiting for you, because the next words they heard were not a denial. They were an admission that another document existed, one that had never been shown to them. Your soulmate asked where it was, and the answer was simple: it has been kept with the family records all these years. Now they knew exactly what they had to find. The DNA test had opened the door, but the hidden document could finally reveal who started the misunderstanding, why it continued for so long, and whether the barrier between you and your soulmate was ever truly meant to exist. Part 6. My beloved child, the hidden document was finally brought into the room, but your soulmate did not open it immediately. They stared at the envelope, knowing that whatever was inside could completely change the story they had believed for years. Don't skip, because the moment they unfolded that paper, they discovered something that connected the family's old decision directly to the misunderstanding surrounding your relationship. The document contained a record from years ago, along with a handwritten explanation from someone who had witnessed the original events. Your soulmate read every line carefully, and then their expression changed. The person who had written it had admitted that the family never had the complete information when they made their decision. They had acted on what they believed was true, and over time, that belief became treated as an unquestionable fact. Your soulmate looked at the DNA report again, then at the document, and suddenly understood why the family had reacted with such shock. The test had not simply produced an unexpected result, it had reopened a story everyone thought was finished. Stay till the end, because your soulmate then noticed one final detail at the bottom of the page. A signature belonging to someone who had known about the original misunderstanding. That signature answered a question that had haunted your soulmate for a long time. Why had certain family members always acted as though your relationship was impossible? The answer was painful but strangely freeing. They had been protecting an old belief that was never properly verified. Your soulmate realized that the separation between you had been influenced by fear of repeating the past, not by anything you had personally done. And suddenly, every moment of hesitation began to make sense. Then came the conversation nobody could avoid. Your soulmate gathered the family together and placed the DNA report and the old document side by side. No accusations. No shouting. Just one question: are we finally ready to accept what the evidence is telling us? The room became quiet. Someone finally admitted that the family had been wrong to make such an important decision without knowing the complete story. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate then said something that nobody expected to hear: I will not let someone else's misunderstanding decide my future anymore. Those words changed the atmosphere completely. For the first time, the family understood that your soulmate was no longer asking for permission to care about you. They were asking for the truth to be respected. And just when everyone believed the mystery was finally solved, your soulmate noticed another name in the old records, one that had never been mentioned during the entire investigation. That name was about to reveal the final missing piece of the story.